What is going on, guys? This is Crowzen, and welcome to a new series on this channel, Oblivion Remastered, and this time we have the Stealth Archer Conjurer Build. And this is going to be a different Stealth Archer than you're going to see with some other videos out there. This one here, I decided to mix in a bunch of schools of magic like conjuration and restoration, so that way your possibilities are kind of endless with this build. The summons can provide a great distraction for you to get sneak attacks if you are seen, and a lot of these lower level enemies you're just going to be able to one-shot with this build, and even with the high level enemies it's only going to take a few hits to get them down. So let's take a look at the build. So beginning with our race and our class, I highly recommend starting out with the Wood Elf. Not only are they going to start out with very high agility and speed, but to me they just feel like the quintessential archers in Elder Scrolls. Just make sure that you do select the Grotwood Origin, as if you do select Reaper's March, you're going to start with less endurance, and that's really not ideal. It's better to start with less personality because we're going to use our spells to raise that instead. But just keep in mind that you can use any race, you don't have to start Wood Elf in order to make this build good. Our class is going to be a custom class, as this gives you more control over your build. So for the specialization, go ahead and select Stealth. For the attributes, go with Agility and Intelligence here. Agility is pretty self-explanatory, that's going to give you more damage on your bows, but also if you do want to use daggers or short swords as a nice secondary option. And Intelligence will give you more maximum magicka, which is going to be great for our conjuration and our restoration. So for the one combat skill, I do select armor because this will allow you to repair enchanted gear, but also when you get this to 75, you will be able to repair your gear beyond 100, which means you're going to get more damage on your bow and more armor rating on your light armor. For the three magic skills, we're going to select Conjuration, Destruction, and Restoration. I really wanted to center this build around Conjuration, so we're going to be using a lot of Flame, Frost, and Storm Atronachs, as all three of them work out very well for their level. As far as destruction, this is going to be very important that we get to 50 destruction as quickly as we can, because that will allow us to buy one of the most powerful weapon enchants that we can put on the game, which is weakness to magic. So we have to buy that spell, which requires 50 destruction. And restoration works out very well for just about any build. In our case, we're going to use this not only to restore our health, but also fortify marksman, fortify sneak, fortify agility. We can do all different types of cool custom spells with this, even fortify willpower to regenerate our magicka very quickly. The three skills in stealth are going to be light armor, marksman, and sneak, and all three of these are pretty self-explanatory. We're going to be using light armor with this build, marksman affects the damage of our bows, and sneak affects our ability to move unseen. For the birth signs, I'm going to give you two options, the first one being the mage, and this is a very simple one which just increases your magicka by 50 points. Since we are going to be using a lot of spells, this makes a lot of sense. Your other option is to select a thief, and this is going to give you plus 10 to agility and speed early on in the game, which will be very useful. The problem is once you reach 100 in these attributes, this is where this becomes less effective. So this is a very good early game birth sign. You do, however, get 10 points in luck, which can be very useful early on in the game as well for all of your skills. And since we're not going to be leveling luck directly, then you're still going to get a good benefit by going this route for the entire game. So as we level up, we are going to get 12 points that we can spend on 3 different attributes, and the way I normally do this is to set priorities. So our number one priority is going to get our agility to 100. So every level we want to put a plus 5 in agility until we reach 100. And the same thing applies for our intelligence, since this is going to give us more magicka to cast more spells. For the last 2 points, we do have two options, and this is really going to depend on what difficulty you're playing on. If you are playing on normal difficulty, then you can just put these points into speed. And what's going to happen is once you reach 100 agility and intelligence, then you can start adding plus 5 in the speed every level until you max that out. Now if you are playing on harder difficulties like Expert or Master, or if you're playing on a modded Expert difficulty like I am, then your better option here is just to go for Endurance. And keep leveling up Endurance, that way you do have a little bit of survivability when you need it. So at level 30, this will give you a general idea of how our attributes are going to look if we went with the Mage Birth Sign, and this is unaltered by any other effects that we can add to raise these attributes higher than 100. Also, I should mention that raising your attributes past 100 through spells or enchants will not give you more damage on agility or strength, so you're not going to get more bow damage by having more than 100 agility. However, all of these other effects will still work, so strength will still give you more carry weight, intelligence will still give you more magicka, willpower will regenerate your magicka faster, and speed will still increase if you get that over 100. So another very important part about our build is having the right equipment. So we're going to start with weapons because this is arguably the most important part for a majority of builds. So if you want to have the best bow, this is going to require that you enchant your own. So that means you're going to have to go through the Mages Guild recommendations or just go to the Wizard's Tower and unlock the Altar of Enchanting there. Once you're ready to go, just pick your bow, pick a Grand Soul, and now we're ready to add some effects. So as we're adding effects, it's very important to note the positioning that we are adding all of these effects to our bow. So you just want to go ahead and start with some type of elemental damage. In my case, I like to use Frost and Shock because those are the two Atronachs that I use in the end game. Now early on, you're going to have access to the Flame Atronach, so what you can do here is just substitute Frost for Flame. And always keep shock damage because there aren't that many enemies that are resistant to it in this game. As far as duration, I go with 1 second, but you will get more value if you do go with 2 seconds and just lower the magnitude instead. I just don't like the dot that goes on enemies where I feel like I gotta get another shot off and then they die anyway, so I just keep this at 1 second. As for the soul trap, I go with 2 seconds here, so that way if one of my Atronachs does kill the enemy, I'm still able to soul trap them. For the next enchant, we're going to add Drain Health. You can just put this at 1 second, and if you are in an early game, you could put this up to 100 points. And what this will do is basically one-shot a lot of those early game enemies for you. So here's where things get a little fun. With Weakness to Frost and Weakness to Shock, it's going to multiply the Frost and the Shock damage that we do after the first attack. So what you want to do with this is make sure that you put the duration to 3 seconds. That way it gives you enough time to get another shot off with a bow, and it'll just keep refreshing this. So that's going to be how you're going to get the most damage with this build, as long as you're able to attack with another shot within 3 seconds. And the most important part of this is going to be Weakness to Magic, which you unlock with 50 Destruction by buying the spell. And you want to put this to 3 seconds as well, and this is actually going to multiply all of our effects, including Drain Health. So every attack after our first attack, as long as we attack that enemy within 3 seconds, it's just going to keep stacking the damage, which means that enemies are going to die very quickly after that first shot. I also should mention that I am not using poisons with this build, so if you do want to use poisons with your bow, then you can add Weakness to Poison to the effects as well. So the endgame bow will look something like this, where we're going to have Frost and Shock damage, Soul Trap, Drain Health, Weakness to Frost, Shock, and Magic. In the early game, you do have the option of picking up the Frostworm bow, and this is actually going to be a very good bow until you're able to enchant your own. At that point, then you can drop this and go for something like the black bow or the silver bow and enchant one of these in the early game. So the one I have here is a good example of an early game bow that you can use with shock damage, fire damage, soul trap, drain health at 100 points, and weakness to shock and fire until you get that weakness to magic, which is at 50 destruction. I should mention that you also can use Hatred Soul at level 19, as this has very high base damage, but it doesn't have Soul Trap, it doesn't have Weakness to Element or Weakness to Magic, so in the end, it's really not going to be better than crafting your own. As far as arrows, enchanted arrows are going to be the highest damage dealing ones because of the elemental damage, but there's not really a reliable way to get a whole bunch of these. So I just settle for the perfect amber arrows, which you can go ahead and craft once you get into the Shivering Isles with amber. So with our gear, here's where things are going to get a little trickier because enchanting our own is actually not going to be the best. The best is actually going to be from Oblivion Gates when you pick up those Sigil Stones. So the best enchants that you can put on your gear are going to be the Transcendent Sigil Stones that you can get from taking on Oblivion Gates at level 17 or higher. So for the armor, we have a whole bunch of different effects that we can add. I highly recommend that you go for at least one Detect Life because this is going to be so valuable for a stealth character. From there, I do like to go with Feather, and since we are going to be using a lot of spells with this build, I like to go with 3 Fortify Magicka enchants from the Transcendent Sigil Stones. Another enchant that you can go for is Chameleon, and this is very powerful, especially if you stack this to 100%. It's actually game breaking at that point, and plus it makes your character invisible all of the time, so I'm not a fan of it, but if that's what you want to go for, the option is there. So some good early game armor sets will be the Shrouded Armor that you can get from the Dark Brotherhood, and this is unleveled, so even at level 1, you're going to get a plus 10 to Fortify, Sneak, Illusion, Marksman, and Blade, so it's very good to have, especially early on in the game. Your alternative is to go for the Mehrunes Razor DLC and get the Morag Tong set. This set is actually very good on all of its effects, and you can just rock this for a good portion of the game until you enchant your own armor. The problem with this set is that it's a weird leveled set where you can get the best bonuses at level 20, but that's kind of too late for a lot of these effects, so if you want to go earlier to get this, you definitely can. So for necklaces and rings, things get even more trickier because the best ones are found randomly in containers. So in my case here, I got lucky enough to get the Acrobat's Amulet, which fortifies my speed, athletics, and acrobatics by 20 points, and all three of those work out very well past 100. For the rings, we're going to be using Ring of Perfection, as this is arguably the best ring in the game if you can find it. It gives you a Fortify plus 10 on all of your attributes, so that's going to be very useful, especially for a lot of them past 100. And then the same thing for the Sorcerer's Ring. I ended up finding this as well, and that gives me a plus 25 to Fortify Magicka. So now we could go through some of my favorite spells that I use with this build. So I have a whole bunch of them that are hotkeyed here. So the first one being, what types of summons are we going to use? Well, I like to use the Frost Atronach as well as the Storm Atronach late game, but I also made it a custom spell. So if you see, I call this the Frost Atronach Shield, where not only is it going to summon the Frost Atronach for 40 seconds, but it's also going to give me Shield, Fire Shield, Frost Shield, and Shock Shield. And you may be wondering, well, what's the purpose of that? Well, it raises your armor rating to the max, which is 85, so it really gives you some very nice defenses that you can have, and really that's kind of how you want to use your Atronachs or your summons in general. Only use them whenever you are in danger of being attacked. And as you can see, I did the same exact thing with a Storm Atronach, same exact effects. So you can actually do this with the Flame Atronach early on in the game. You might just have to lower the magnitude down of your shield. So another very important spell for any build is Feather, because this increases your carry weight. So I'm using Pack Mule, which requires 75 alteration, which gives me 150 points of Feather, also for 300 seconds. But you can create your own at the Mages Guild for 100 points and 120 seconds. I also use a spell called Luck Charm, which works out very well whenever you're buying or selling items, as well as whenever you're just trying to get more information or trying to get somebody to like you. So Luck Charm basically is a charm on touch for 100 points, Fortify Mercantile, and then also Fortify Luck by 100 points, all for 1 second. It only costs 8 Magicka. It's very powerful. So for my go-to restoration spell, I use a custom created one called Resto Power, and the main idea behind this one is adding 100 points of Fortify Willpower by at least 5 seconds, and what this will do is it'll restore your Magicka very quickly. And finally, another custom created spell here, I call this the Invisibility Recover spell, and this will turn you invisible for 15 seconds, as well as fortifying your willpower for that amount by 100 points and restoring your health gradually. So this is a very good spell that you can use as a last resort if you are seen or if you are close to dying, as this will not only restore your health but turn you invisible, and it'll allow you to get a better position on that enemy. So next up, we can go over some combat tips for the Stealth Archer Conjurer, so make sure that you stick around because there are quite a few things to learn here. So if you are looking to chain sneak attacks, I recommend trying to be as far away as the enemy as you can, because it does seem like you have an easier time in order to chain sneak attacks consecutively the further you are away from these enemies. And a great tool that we have with this build is that if you are seen or aggroed, you can just summon one of your Atronachs, and generally the enemies will aggro them first, which will allow you to reposition, get behind their back, and still be able to get sneak attacks even though the fight is going on. And even though I said this in the equipment setup, I still gotta say it again. I highly recommend that you have at least one piece of Detect Life on something. That way you are able to see enemies through walls. I cannot tell you how important that is when you are playing a Stealth Archer. And one thing that you are going to see is that sometimes your sneak attacks will do 1 times damage. I think this is just a bug. I'm not sure why that's there, because it should be 3 times on all of your attacks. And one very important item for nearly any build in this game is picking up Azora Star. And once you have that, I recommend just putting that on your hotkey, and anytime your charge runs low on your bow, you can just go right into that Azora Star from your hotkey and recharge your bow easily. And one animation that breaks my sneak so badly is this kind of skidding animation that you get whenever you go off of some kind of elevated platform, whether that's steps or a rock, and it just seems like it aggroes all enemies whenever that happens. I'm not really sure why it aggroes enemies that way, so I think it's just a bug. And sometimes even just spawning into an area will get you aggroed by enemies, and this is a perfect opportunity to use your invisibility spell, and that way you can still reposition yourself and get those sneak attacks. So thank you guys for watching till the end, and I hope you enjoyed my Stealth Archer Conjurer build, and I hope you learned something in the process. And if this video does well, I will continue making Oblivion Remastered builds, as Oblivion is probably my favorite game of all time. So thank you guys again, and I will see you in the next video.